Well, hey everybody. Uh, this is Caleb Barrows and Paul Brandis here. We just wanted to make a quick video for you. We love that you're part of this launch team and so pumped that you're joining us. And I know that some of you missed our first or second session or others in the future. So we just wanted to record this quick video. Paul and I are just going to chat real quick and cover in a blitzkrieg fashion what we did in the first session. So actually, this might be the best way to get it. Forget an hour. This is going to be like 5 minutes.
Don't say that though, Caleb. They won't come to the meetings.
No, it's true. They're like, we found a cheat code for doing launch team training.
No.
More quickly, less interaction and all the rest. So we're going to just walk through what we covered in that first session. That was really just an introduction, kind of a welcome, and then talking about the core aspects of King's Cross Church, this church plant, really our mission and our vision and our values. So in that session, we handed out a document, which I'm going to open for us real quick, Paul. We're just going to walk through this. Oh, the goodness of Zoom and all that it can do for us. So we've got this here called our ministry blueprint. Let me go back to here, the beginning. Just kind of lays out really the most important aspects of how we think ministry should be done in this upcoming church plant. And so, first of all, why we exist in the first place. What's the purpose or the mission of this plant? And we kind of asked our launch team right in the beginning, what do you think the purposes of the church are? And we had people just talk about, this is the purpose, that's the purpose, to love God, to love people. We kind of categorized it down to just those three things that really we know we are called to go and evangelize and to make disciples. We're also called to build up those disciples and mature them more in Jesus. But everything really falls underneath glorifying God. Like if we're not doing that as a church, if we're not enjoying Him, delighting in Him, and glorifying Him, then we're really missing our purpose. Because we can get so caught in these horizontal side purposes that yes, God did give us and did send us out, but mainly it's just to glorify Him, to know Him. And if we're missing that as a church, we're really missing the heart of our purpose. So kind of landed that to glorify God as the key purpose of the church. And so we kind of framed our mission, our purpose. We said King's Cross Church exists to lead people into the fullness of life found only in Jesus. And we believe this because we think that's how God's really glorified, when we're living in the fullness of life and delighting in Him. And Paul's going to explain that more in just a second. And we love that language, fullness of life, from John 10:10, and that we know that people who don't know Jesus, when they first come into His life, they enter into that fullness a little bit more. But even when you've known Him for a long time, there's still more growth, still more of that fullness to grow into. So for people who aren't Christians or those who have been a long time, we believe there's more for us to lead people into. So that's kind of our mission, our purpose there. But kind of what comes up next is, what's that even look like? Okay, what's that fullness of life even mean, this disciple describe, which Paul's going to knock out for us.
Well, and I really appreciate you, Caleb, answering the question of, if the core chief purpose of the church is to glorify God, why isn't that language in our mission statement? And that's, I mean, it's just a matter of exactly what Caleb said, that we believe that God is most glorified when we are most at rest in Him, when we are at most delighted in Him. And so that's the link between the glory of God and our church's mission statement. And the other thing that we like about how we've particularly articulated our church's purpose is that it immediately begs this question of, well, what does this fullness of life look like? And so for us, it's a really important question to answer. And so we take on the next page here, and we went through this in the meeting, what is a disciple? You get that word gets thrown around a lot. What is a disciple? What is one who follows Jesus? What do they look like? And we've really settled on these three words to describe who a disciple is. So enjoy God, belong to one another, and renew all things. And so we love these three words. They're grounded in Scripture, drawn from there. I mean, just start going through the Psalms and circle the amount of times you see the word delight or joy, and you'll get a sense that this is what we ought to be doing in our relationship with God. And we favor at King's Cross delight over duty, and really pressing in more deeply to enjoying God and understanding all that we have in Him through Jesus. We like the word belong. We think that is I mean, it's a in some ways it's an intense word, but we think that that is what the church ought to be, that we ought to really belong to one another. And we think that that summarizes the one another teachings in the New Testament that we see in multiple of the letters written by the apostles to the early churches, and what they ought to do for one another. And so we love that word. We think it really captures the depth of relationship there. And we love this picture too of renewal. We've been journeying with many of you this summer through the book Reappearing Church by Mark Sayers, and we're compelled by this vision that God, through Jesus, is going to renew all things, and that in fact he's already begun to do so. And the incredible part of the church is we get invited into that work in a whole variety of different ways. So this is what a disciple ought to look like. This is what a full and rich life looks like that Jesus invites us into. And so we love these words to describe a disciple.
Yeah, if you want to hear more, Paul and I started a podcast called Enjoy, Belong, Renew. We really like those words. So wherever you get your podcasts, you can check that out too. We believe those are so central. So as we fleshed out that mission and even that disciple described, also like, what's that even look like for these things to start happening? If this was really alive and present in all of our lives, what would that result in? What would start happening around us? We just know, like, man, we'd love to see like businesses flourish in Rice County. We want to see more kids taken out of the foster care system and in homes. We want to see our city administrations and all of our, even the college and all of those things flourish here in Rice County and throughout Central Kansas. We want to see people come to know Jesus and families be transformed. That's what we think this would start to look like. And maybe a phrase that just captures all of those things together is just gospel renewal. So we want to see a movement of discipleship and church planting generate that kind of gospel renewal here in Central Kansas. That's what we're after. That's what we're aiming for. That's the vision we have. So after that, we began to cover our values. What's most important to us as a church plant? Lots of different things we could focus on, but the personality of this church plant, if you will, is really going to be dominated by these ideas. And so Paul and I love these. We can talk about these real quick. First of all, it's just gospel centered. That each week we want to land back on what Jesus has done for us and what we have in God because of him. So again, whether you have never really heard about Jesus before or you've been hearing about Jesus all the time, we believe all of us grow more by coming back to the gospel. It's the A to Z, not just the ABCs of faith, but the A to Z of the Christian life. Also going to be biblically based. We believe that all of our decisions about what is right, wrong, and how we should operate as a church and what's most important is biblically based, and want to come back to scripture every Sunday as well, even in how we teach. Spirit filled. We want to be a church that is alive in Jesus and his spirit, transformation focused, and really seeing how do we have our lives look more and more like the lifestyle of Jesus and take on his life. So putting off our old self and putting on the new self created to be like Jesus in true righteousness and holiness. So things are changing in our lives, relationally driven. We don't hate programs, but we just know that even in Jesus's ministry, he most invested in people, just in these one-on-one small relationships, very intense. And that's where some of the best change happens in our lives. I'm sure for a lot of you, if you think about deepest moments of growth for you, that probably happened through a relationship, someone just pouring into you over time. And we really want to take the effort to make that happen for other people.
Yeah, maybe just a quick point on that, Caleb. We don't hate programs, and we will utilize programs in as much as they facilitate really deep and meaningful relationships. And so that's kind of our quick hit philosophy, not super fleshed out, maybe a little half-baked on programs. But that'll be important to us, is to make sure that we are relationally focused, not program focused. We're not we're all right with programs, but we're also really excited about organic things happening and developing and just that sort of ebb and flow of all of that. So, but I love that one in particular, relationally focused.
Yeah, and I love how you said that.
Or relationally driven. There we go.
That's the second word in all these, but yeah.
I know, right.
Those programs can facilitate those relationships.
Yes. Catalyze that.
Catalyze. Next was outward oriented, that we want this church to even have the diversity we see up in Lyons and around Rice County. We want to be focused on those around us, don't want to become insular and just inward looking. And then lastly, multiplication minded, that personally for each one of us, that we would be active in making disciples in our everyday life, but also institutionally as a church, that we would be sending out new church plants and giving life to new towns and areas around us in Central Kansas. So we want to multiply ourselves individually and institutionally. And so as we've thought about this church plant and what God has laid on our heart, these are the values that have most stood out to us, that we feel we want these to shine through. That if you come and a part of King's Cross, man, this is what you see happening. So this is where it's so important as well, because this is where we're going to find that deeper connection between one another, that we're really compatible with one another as a team because we have deep agreement on these kinds of values, that this is the personality of this church. So that's what we covered in our first training session. The mission.
We also assigned the homework of reading what's on that next page off to the right of what we believe.
Yes. And so if you're interested in getting this doc and you don't have that already, please reach out to Paul and I. We can email that to you, and we should have that up and available online as well. So thanks guys again for being a part of this team and for getting this update video too about this training. Appreciate you all.